think of the SEC this year, I think some teams are up, some teams are down. I think it's still a really good conference as far as college football. I'd say the biggest difference, what am I seeing now to what I kind of felt like 10 years ago and even 5 years ago, is they don't win as much as they used to at the line of scrimmage. I think there's more parity in college football. I think when you look in the 2000s, the best line of scrimmage, specifically defense, but also offense as well, was in the SEC. And now I think you're getting more teams, especially not Power 5 conferences, that can compete, not necessarily win, but compete at the line of scrimmage. And I think that's also one reason you're seeing more upsets.
How have you seen Jalen improve from year 1 to year 2?
I think he's improved greatly. I think he's a different player. He's always effective. He's always smart with the football. He wouldn't turn it over. But I think now he's really able to hit those plays that just puts a dagger in the defense. And that's going to happen from year 1 to year 2. And I think he's improved as a passer. I think his patience has improved, his understanding of what the defense is trying to do against him. And at the same time, he's just very athletic.
There have been some comparisons maybe between you and Jalen as running quarterbacks and that development. What have you seen from his game as far as that? You see any similarities yourself and things he can work on still?
I think he's improved in every area of his game. Both of us were guys that we weren't afraid to carry the ball, and especially near the red zone. I think that's when he's probably most effective with some of those things. But I also really like the way Tebow is using him. And he's not necessarily taking a bunch of hits, but he's being very effective when he carries the football. And but he is growing as a passer. And what I love is he knows that his team is better than almost anybody they face, and he's not putting his offense in harm's way where there's a lot of chances for tip balls, interceptions, miscues, and he plays very, very smart.
When you played, there were 4 or 5 head coaches in the league that had national championships. Now there's Nick.
Yeah.
What do you think of the head coaches in the SEC?
Well, I think there's a lot of guys that are kind of up and coming and trying to show themselves, but at that point there were a lot of guys who had been there and done that, and I think that the SEC will get back to that point.
You mentioned Brian Dable just now. What have you seen from him that you like that he's doing with this offense?
He's done a really good job. I've known him for a while. He's a very smart, intelligent guy, and he does a great job of game planning and keeping defenses on their heels. And they'll expect one thing, and Alabama's shown one thing, and from that same player, that same formation, he has something off of it the next week. And I think he really does a good job of throwing off his tendencies, and I think that's something that makes defenses not sleep at night.
You were on some pretty good Florida teams. You guys saw big point spreads when you played teams. When you're that big a favorite every week like Alabama is, how do you stay mentally focused?
You can't get complacent. You have to have great leadership. You have to lock in every single week. You have to find a way to keep an edge, and that can come by, I was in Alabama's weight room today, and I see all the photos of Tennessee and everything, and it's there. Nick does a really good job of whether it's true or not, you find ways to create an edge. Urban did the same thing, and he still does it. And we would have every single quote that was negative that week, from Corso to Herb Street to anything that could possibly be taken as negative was gonna be on our boards. We were gonna hear about it, and maybe that's what some of the players use. Other players just use the philosophy of always being their best. But whatever it is, you have to be able to rally around something, because one of the best things about this game, college football, is the emotion. And when you don't show up with emotion, you can lose at any time. And what we see in college football all the time is the big comebacks is when teams get momentum. Momentum is a hard thing to stop, and it's an amazing thing when it's rolling with you. And that's why in high school, I know it's high school football, but we would always after we scored, we would put up 5 fingers and we'd chant Mo, because our goal was to keep the momentum. And if you do, something doesn't happen in that 5 minutes, you start to lose it. So that's why a lot of times we just score and kick onside kicks just to have the chance of getting it, to keep that momentum. And it was just, it's an underrated part of this game.
You played early in your career. What are some of the challenges that we're seeing more and more? Shea Patterson and younger guys get in there early. Jalen, of course, Jake Fromm at Georgia. What are the challenges that young quarterbacks face?
Well, I think you're seeing more young guys because they're more prepared to play college football because of the offenses, the 7-on-7, the recruiting, Elite 11s. There's all these camps, all these ways for these kids to get better and improve and be ready to step into college and compete. And I think that's way more so than 15, 20 years ago for sure, and even 5, 10 years ago. Guys were just coming in highly touted, but also ready to understand the systems. Before, guys would know, all right, that's cover 3, that's man-to-man, that's blitz, that's a zone dog. Now they understand it like the back of their hand. It's easy. You've been going through it for years. You can find that and learn it and know it by the time you get into college. And so I just think it's easier for young quarterbacks to be able to compete.
And in that form, a lot of teams are relying on young quarterbacks. I guess
have to.
I mean,
yeah, and it's huge. You look at where Ole Miss would be if they did not have Shea Patterson this season. He is the brightest spot on their team with A.J. Brown and a couple other playmakers. And so, you have special guys, and when you have guys that are 3-year guys or going to be really good college players, I'm all for getting them in there early. Because you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what the future is going to hold. But you better get those guys in there, get them prepared, and they start competing.
So many hit and miss though too with recruiting quarterbacks, and just kind of like going to the
inexact science. Yeah,
going to the pros as well. I guess what are the intangibles that you noticed in yourself and you've seen some other guys, young guys, play early?
Well, what I would look for in quarterbacks is probably number one, and it's really hard to judge, but is in the biggest moments of the game, of the season, of their career. Were they at their best, or was their best in the first quarter when they were dominating someone, when they were playing a lesser than opponent? And for those guys, yeah, they might be really good, but I want the guys that have something when all the pressure's on them, because those guys give me a chance in big games and big moments for championships. And I really look for that in guys. And then you also look for things that you can't teach. And some people call it factor, some people call it intangibles, whatever you want to call it. Something that makes everybody else better around them, makes them believe, it makes them focus, it makes them lock in. Guys that get excited to play with somebody. I was sharing this morning with someone that, like Baker Mayfield, he has that mentality, that attitude. I mean, he's at the Heisman, and all the guys that are competing for it last year, they're all nervous, and he's the one guy that in the midst of that he's like totally calm and cool and can make jokes and have fun. And it's not just about making jokes, but it's about being able to handle that moment, and that the moment's not too big for you. And I think those are some important traits for quarterbacks to have.
If you're a Heisman voter, if you had to vote for an SEC player for Heisman right now, who would it be?
That's a good question. I think Jalen's up there with the way that he's competed this year, but I also think that sometimes it can hurt him because how good his team is and how dominant it is in the offensive line, and that they average 4.3 yards before they get touched. So that's going to knock a lot of voters, because they're going to say, well, other guys have had to do more. So I think it sometimes can be hard for Alabama players because of that. I know Minka was in the top few last week, and I think Minka is a really good player, but I also think because his defense is so good, he doesn't get a chance to make as many tackles and as many interceptions, as many plays as other guys. So I think this year it's going to be hard for an SEC guy to step up, because you look at the top 2 teams in Alabama and Georgia, and they're so dominant. And when the team is so dominant, they don't have as many fourth quarter games. They don't have the same chance for Heisman moments. And the best few players on Georgia's team are their linebackers and their running back, and I think they take away from each other.
Marcus said a defensive Charles Woodson notwithstanding, Marcus said a defensive player never won the Heisman. You agree with that?
Will never win the Heisman? Yeah. No, I don't know. I would love to see a defensive player win the Heisman. Someone that is just a game changer. I love this game so much, and I don't love it just being an offensive award or a quarterback or receiver or running back award. I love it for it being someone that just totally dominates at what they do, and it changes the game because how they play. And I think there's defensive guys that can do that.
Earlier this week, Derek Mason said, having played both Alabama and Georgia, Alabama is clearly the better team. What are your thoughts on just watching on film and comparing the two if they meet in December?
Yeah, I think it would be a really great matchup. I think Georgia has the style of team that could match up with an Alabama because of their front seven being able to stop the run, having 3 great linebackers, having a really big interior defensive line, being able to run the ball. One of the differences is Jake doesn't have a lot of experience. Jalen has a lot of experience in big games, and then the ability to run with the football from the quarterback position. I think that's